Alright, I'm recording. This is going to be another step in your game project. I want you guys to choose something like tic-tac-toe, hangman, rock, paper, scissors, adventure game, rolling dice, something around there, something with cards. And several people have said to me like, whoa, I don't know if I can do this. It's a big thing. I can't just sit down and write hangman. And that's true. It's really hard to do it all at once, but you don't have to do it all at once. The idea is we're going to break it down into small steps, which are very doable. So let's say I'm going to use an example. This is a game that doesn't exist, but imagine it does. The computer has a random number. It's going to say, hey, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. And you, the user, get 3 guesses. You're going to say 1, and I'll tell you right, or greater than, or less than. And then you do the next one, and I'll tell you right, or greater than, or less than. So it does narrow it down, and you do have a pretty good chance of winning after 3 of those. But if you don't, you lose. Now, let's say we were going to code that, but not code yet. We're just going to write out the steps. Okay, so the computer chooses a number. I'm going to say random, but it doesn't have to be random. The user doesn't see it. And if the user only plays once, then they'll never have a good idea of how it's happening anyway. And then almost every game we ever do is going to have a loop. So every turn something happens. Or even if it's a live real-time game, it would have stuff happen every frame, or every tick is the term we're going to use later. So every turn the user guesses, and right away we want to check to see if that's good. If they put a letter or something that's not 1 to 10, we want to tell them right away to try over, because we don't want to get an error in the next step where we check if it's correct, or check if it's greater or lesser. And then we print that, and then usually after the middle part of a turn, we have to decide, is there going to be another turn, or is it a game over? So then we check if it's probably before that we want to like count down the turns. Okay, like I said, they get 3 turns, so we could make a turn variable, or we could have this be a for loop that includes a variable at the core of it. And then we see game over. If they win, it could be right here. Instantly break and tell them that. But if it's a game over, it might be a bit later. And then there might be 1 or 2 other things that I'm forgetting. But the point is, when I write this code, now I can just do it really easily. I can just say like, oh, if game over, I could say something like if turns equals 0, print game over, and break. Like, that is incredibly simple. And I might change my mind later and do it a little differently, or add a different point in the order, but that looks pretty simple to me. And then I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this. You don't have to write the code top to bottom in order, and you definitely don't have to do it from a blank doc, because if you sit down and say, oh, I'm going to make this game, you try to type it all at once, you are very likely to miss things, do it in an ugly way, encounter errors, or just get stuck and stare at it and not know what to do. So today, your assignment is not any code at all. It's just to do this. Is to write out the comments that are your framework. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about pseudocode. Pseudocode is when you write code that doesn't really run because it's not quite in the right syntax, but you just say like, oh, if if they're out of turns, then break, or if user guess is invalid, then do whatever. It's not there, but it's pretty close to there. And the idea about this is that it doesn't really matter what language it's in. Okay, if we were typing code in JavaScript, we would still start with this basic idea. If we were typing code in C, we would still start with this basic idea. And we happen to be using Python, but the flowchart is the same. The idea in your brain is the same, and that's what you want to think of. And, you know, whether or not it's a single equals or a double equals, or whether or not you put parentheses in the right place, that's not the important part. The important part is, do you know what's happening and in what order? And then we can figure out how to do the right syntax so you don't get an error. Okay, so that's step 2 of your game, and we'll assign that today.